The woman placed a phone in her husband's coffin and watched the footage the following day, terrified. The woman received a phone call from her husband's phone the morning after the funeral. The woman switches on the video call and remains completely still. Join me today as we uncover the story of the woman put a phone in her husband's coffin. Watching the video in the morning, she was horrified. But before we dig down deep, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to get updated whenever a new video is published. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. The memorial. Irina awoke to the sight of light streaming in through the window. She didn't think she'd be able to sleep after everything that had transpired that day. She was exhausted as she returned from the graveyard. Irina was terrified since her spouse had died, but she never gave up hope. She held her phone and continued to gaze even when she awoke. Radislav may have made calls or sent texts. Even though she knew he was gone, she never gave up on the idea. While she was looking, Irina placed a phone in her husband's coffin and kept it quiet. She had no idea why she'd done it, yet it is just an odd notion, and she ultimately agreed to do it. She kissed him on the face and placed the phone onto the body, praying he would contact her one day, since she realised her life would be worthless without him. While Irma got up and grabbed something to eat as she was hungry, she heard a tap at the door. Irina felt reluctant to open the door. Instead, she grabbed the knob to take a closer look, only to discover that it was Helena. The woman was delighted to see her and invited her into her home where they all sat tall. Helena was very well informed that her husband's daughter had been in excruciating pain due to her husband's demise, and she was devastated by her father's death, so she went to see if she could console her. Helena is a lovely young lady whom Irina's father met shortly after his wife died. They hardly lasted a year before they both broke apart. The lady, on her part, quickly approved her father's marriage to Helena, since she discovered she was an intellectual and attractive woman who could care for him. Nonetheless, fate intended her father to die in the woods in the same year where they got married. However, Helena is brave and intelligent, and she quickly recovers from her shock and begins anew after a horrific traffic accident which left her sad and upset at first. Helena stayed alongside her daughter-in-law for a while, as she wanted her to think that Helena's her friend, pushing her to contemplate their future, since life does not cease with death. She then said her goodbyes and advised her to leave since she had a meeting the next day. After speaking with her ex-stepmother, Irina's confidence grew and she was okay. She decided to let go of unpleasant notions, especially the idea of yearning for her late husband's contact. In addition, she began to consider how she might overcome the trauma and return to work immediately, believing that interaction with people would lift her spirits and help her to forget the tragedy that had befallen her. Irina had slept the entire day away. When she awoke in the evening, she came into the kitchen and cleaned all the dirty dishes accumulated there before lying on the bed. Her phone abruptly rang. When she answered the phone, a bank representative chatted with her, provided her to fill out a credit card, and inquired if she wanted to be informed about the bank's offers. On the other hand, the woman informed her she didn't have to appreciate her for something like the offer and then hung up. The undead. She placed her phone by her side and attempted to sleep once more. The cell phone rang once more a few moments later. Then, when Irina glanced at her phone, she was surprised and scared to see her husband's photo and name. Then she recalls she had put her husband's phone inside the casket with him and assumed he was indeed the one calling. But how did this come to be? The man is fully dead and unable to communicate from beyond the grave. Irina could not talk or move, and all she could do was put the phone in her fingers, shivering and unable to respond. The ringing paused for a moment, but the phone immediately rang again, and Irina began beating her head in an attempt to wake up from the frightening dream. All of this is a fact, and that she should deal with it on her own. But instead, the woman answered the phone, refused to talk, and stayed silent while hearing the noise, and waited for her husband's voice. The other guy, on the other hand, was quiet. As a result, she activated the video conferencing equipment. Irina observed a young woman staring at her, and unwilling to speak right there and then, so she ended the conversation. Irina tried calling the number again, but it was either disconnected or out of service. The woman was scared at this time and quickly dialed 911 to report what had occurred. The policeman then told her to stay calm, since whatever she was saying was unacceptable. and he invited her to come to the station if she believed anything was wrong. Waiting for the perfect timing. Irina is terrified and contemplates contacting somebody to inform them what has occurred. She thought about telling her friends, but she was scared that they would mock her, and she didn't want to tell her family since she didn't know whether they would believe her. Helena was the one person she trusted because she may think about what had happened to her, so she immediately phoned her and informed her what had occurred. Helena advised her ex-husband's daughter to keep her chilly and to remember that no one believes what she says. When she realised Irina was confident about what she said, she begged her to stay in her apartment and not leave since she would be there in less than half an hour. Helena sat down on the sofa with Irina and began questioning her about the phone conversation. And then, when the former informed her of the information and pointed out a young woman in the video, she was shocked. Irina requested that she follows her to her husband's grave so that they may reanimate the body and figure out what was going on. Helena then informed her that something similar occurred to her after her husband died, and almost all of the numbers that came on her phone were suspicious. How it all started. Then a stranger greeted her with roses in his hands and inquired why she had gone to her husband's grave. The woman was taken aback by the man's question and refused to engage in conversation with him. However, when the latter informed her of this, she saw unusual occurrences the day before her husband's burial and inquired whether she was aware of them. She got the details from an old school friend who worked at the police precinct after a long search. She then proceeded to the residence right away. Whenever the young lady got to the timber home in the woods and opened the door, she was shocked to discover the very same young woman seated there even though she had seen it on the phone. When she saw her, she went to get in a wheelchair and sit in it with a shackled and muzzled man. Irina discovered that he was her husband, Radislav, and she approached him and she was dumbfounded. Meanwhile, a woman arrived with a firearm in her hand and a disguise over her face, asking Irina why she did not move, then removing the mask from her face and firing a shot at the young woman since the weapon's bearer was Helena. Helena contacted Irina and informed her that she's the one who's killed her father by disabling his vehicle's brakes since she married him for his wealth, and first requested him to give her the flat and money. However, the latter startled her when he informed her that his residence and money were all held only by his daughter and that she's not permitted to take them. Fast forward, she gave the doctor money and requested him to write a death record instead of treating him. They were assisted by morgue staff, who concealed the body from view. Helena was accused of forcibly removing specific papers from Irina. It allocated them to them. Her husband pushed Helena in this wheelchair and beat her until she fell on the ground, then urged his wife to flee. Helena shot Radislav and attempted to flee into the nearby woodland. On the other hand, the authorities encircled and arrested her and took them to the hospital right away. Irina went to the hospital with her spouse and stayed with him. However, he was struck in the shoulder by a bullet, and he's still dealing with the aftermath of the poison in his stomach. Irina stayed with her husband for many days till his condition improved, while she hired a lawyer to seek vengeance on the young lady and her accomplices, who murdered her father and attempted to murder her. Irina was skeptical that her husband would return to life. Nevertheless, she was happy to stay by his side, assisted him in his recovery, and covered all of his expenses. And that is all for today's story. Did you enjoy the story? What would you do if you were Irina? How could someone survive hardship? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Before leaving, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to get updated on our future content. With that being said, see you in the next one.